What's going on, guys? Welcome back. And today I got for you an early look at my top 24 running back redraft rankings. I would just like to state and make sure you guys know that nothing you see today is going to be final and are anywhere close to my final 2024 fantasy football rankings. It's just an early look at how I view these guys heading into training camp, which actually starts tomorrow. So there's a lot of room to change. There's a lot of things we need to figure out because there's a lot of ambiguity with certain backfields and certain depth charts, and we just need to find out how coaches and staffs feel about certain guys in those situations and which guys they prefer over the other. So, yeah, I will make an updated version of this once we get closer to the season and once your fantasy drafts start ripping up. So, without further ado, let's just get right into it. At number one, I have Christian McCaffrey. I mean, what else is there to say about the guy, right? Absolute best running back in football, arguably the best skill position player in football, on the best offense in football. There's really not much else to say. We saw exactly what Christian McCaffrey was capable of in 2023. And if we're being quite honest, the ceiling and upside in 2024 for Christian McCaffrey might only get higher. If Brandon Ayuk were in fact to be traded, we all see the reports that he's very upset with the San Francisco 49ers front office and how they're handling his contract situation and how he doesn't feel as if he's being valued at what he's worth, then that would only open up more opportunities and touches for Christian McCaffrey, which would lead to Christian McCaffrey potentially breaking fantasy football in 2024 in a way we haven't seen in quite some time. So I think he should be the clear 101 in all formats that aren't Superflex, and I think he's set to smash once again in 2024. And then at number two, Saquon Barkley. Look, I know, already getting controversial, but I don't understand how this guy is ranked consensusly outside of the top five. This is an elite running back who we finally get in an elite offense in an elite situation, and now we're all cooled off on him. It just doesn't make any sense to me, like whatsoever. This is a running back who goes from the 31st ranked O-line in run block win rate last year to the Philadelphia Eagles O-line, who ranked first in run block win rate. And I know a lot of people are going to be concerned and worried about the departure of Jason Kelce due to the retirement. However, this is still a Philadelphia Eagles O-line that had three guys not named Jason Kelce who were top three in the entire NFL in run block win rate. And I mean 1, 2, and 3. Lane Johnson was first in the entire NFL and first amongst all right tackles in run block win rate. Jordan Mailata was second amongst the entire NFL and first amongst left tackles in run block win rate. And Landon Dickerson was third in the entire NFL and first amongst all interior O-linemen in run block win rate. So this is still an elite offensive line. Arguably still the best offensive line in football, even without Jason Kelce. And let's just talk about the offense as a whole for a second. This is an elite offense with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, with Kellen Moore calling plays. They're going to gain a ton of yards. They're going to score a ton of points. And there's a clear and obvious path for Saquon Barkley to be the true workhorse who's going to garner 275-plus touches in that offense. I want every single piece of a guy like that. Now, let's touch on the touchdown poaching of Jalen Hurts, because I know that's a big concern to a lot of people. And personally, I feel as if this is the most overblown narrative in the entire fantasy community. If we just look at 2022, when the Philadelphia Eagles had Miles Sanders, he set a career high in rushing touchdowns with 11. It's not like they don't want to use their running backs on the goal line or the red zone, and that even includes last year. If we just look at DeAndre Swift, in 2023, he was top 10 amongst all players in touches within the 10-yard line, and top 15 amongst all NFL players on touches within the 5-yard line. They tried to use him in the goal line. They tried to get him those red zone touches. The problem is he was just absolutely horrific at converting those into touchdowns, which is why they decided to rely on Jalen Hurts' legs in the tush push in that section of the field. That won't be the case with Saquon Barkley in 2024. He will take advantage of those opportunities. He will get in the end zone. And I think we're looking at a season for Saquon that ends in 12 to 15 touchdowns relatively easily. And let's touch on how much does Saquon Barkley have left. I know a lot of people have a concern about that since he's heading into his age 27 season, and he's battled injuries through his career, as we all know. When I cut on the film, I was so impressed by Saquon Barkley, man. He was making guys miss in the hole. He was creating for himself. He was breaking tackles. He was breaking away runs. And just to show you how electric and dynamic he still is, he was tied for the league lead in 2023 in 30-plus yard rushes with Devon Achane and Breece Hall, two of the most explosive, dynamic young running backs in the NFL. So I think right there, that shows you that Saquon Barkley has a ton of juice left. And if we're being honest, to be tied for the league lead in 30-plus yard rushes when you're running behind an O-line that can't open up any type of hole for you and you're doing it yourself, that is so impressive to me. So I think it's wheels up for Saquon Barkley in 2024. I think he's set to absolutely smash, and I think we finally get the Saquon Barkley that we've been waiting for since his rookie season. And then moving on to number 3 and 4, these are two guys I view very similarly. I just ultimately decided to go with Breece Hall over Bijan because we've seen that elite season from Breece Hall already. And that was coming fresh off a torn ACL. So I think in 2024, we can only expect a more dynamic and explosive Breece Hall, which could be scary for fantasy football in 2024. Let's just touch on the situation here quick. This situation only got exponentially better for Breece Hall going into the season. The New York Jets invested into their offensive line in massive ways, bringing in Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses, and then drafting Olu Fashanu in the first round. So this O-line will be vastly improved. It will be the best O-line Breece Hall's run behind since his time in the NFL. And then let's just touch on Aaron Rodgers real quick. They finally get Aaron Rodgers healthy in 2024. And while I know a lot of people are going to be concerned with how much does Aaron Rodgers have left, is he the same player we all know and love? The answer to that is probably not. However, 75% of Aaron Rodgers is still unbelievably better than anything the New York Jets have had in the last 2 years since Breece Hall has been a New York Jet. So that will just lead to them having more sustaining drives, which is more touches for Breece Hall, and then more scoring opportunities, which is more touchdown potential for Breece Hall. So like I said, I think he's set to smash in 2024 once again. And if by some miracle Aaron Rodgers is still the 2020 MVP Aaron Rodgers, then Breece Hall in this entire Jets offense is going to explode in 2024. And then moving on to Bijan Robinson at 4. This is another guy who gets a massive situation and quarterback upgrade going into this season. The Atlanta Falcons in the offseason go out and bring in Raheem Morris, and along with him, he brings Zach Robinson, the quarterback coach of the LA Rams, to be his offensive coordinator and the play caller. And that means that he will be bringing with him this Sean McVay offense that we've all seen be extremely fantasy-friendly to running backs in the past. We can just take a look at last year and show what this system did for Kyron Williams, averaging over 20 half-point PPR fantasy points per game. And the other thing about this system that's huge for fantasy purposes is they absolutely love to use a true workhorse back, a true 275-plus touch back who gets all the goal line and receiving work, which will be absolutely huge for Bijan Robinson because that's something we didn't see last year with Arthur Smith as the play caller. And they go out in the offseason and sign Kirk Cousins to be the quarterback, a massive quarterback upgrade from Taylor Heineke, Desmond Ridder, and Marcus Mariota that the Falcons have dealt with the last 2 years. This offense is set to score a ton more points. Vegas projects them to score a ton more points, and I think they're going to be in a fantastic situation in 2024 to vastly improve as an offense, and I think Bijan Robinson is the absolute main benefactor of that all. Moving on to 5, 6, and 7, I have Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Devon Achane. Starting with Jonathan Taylor, look, I know a lot of people are down on Jonathan Taylor heading into this season due to his disappointing 2023, but I think as a whole we really need to understand how much that Jonathan Taylor was going through last year. He was fighting for a new contract, didn't get it immediately, which led to him demanding a trade, and then after he demanded a trade, he hurt his ankle, which landed him on the PUP. As he was on the PUP, he ended up getting his contract. But because he was on the PUP, he missed a ton of training camp, all of training camp if I remember correctly, and a ton of early season practices, which led to him starting the season slow. And then as soon as he started to find his gear, as soon as he started to become the Jonathan Taylor we all know, he went out with a torn thumb ligament, which led to him missing games. He comes back, hits his groove again, and then the last game of the season, we see Jonathan Taylor go for 180 and a touchdown. And I fully expect that to be the Jonathan Taylor we see in 2024, a dynamic, explosive workhorse. And I know the main concerns with Jonathan Taylor is he's not going to catch passes and the touchdown poaching of Anthony Richardson. And the thing with Jonathan Taylor is I'm not sure he's like some of these other guys that he needs the receiving work to be effective because he's going to see 270 carries. There's no real competition on this roster yet in terms of touches, with Trey Sermon being the only guy behind him. He's going to see the absolute bulk of the carries. He's going to see all the goal line work, and he'll see some receiving work. Will he ever be a 50, 60 reception guy? No, absolutely not, especially not in an offense with Anthony Richardson, who's not going to check the ball down much. But like I said, he's going to get a ton of carries, and he's going to get a ton of goal line opportunities. And let's touch on the goal line opportunities for a second. Look, Anthony Richardson will absolutely take some touchdowns. Shane Steichen will absolutely design some plays for Anthony Richardson in the red zone and on the goal line for him to use his legs and exploit the defense. That will absolutely happen. But if we just look back at 2022 when Shane Steichen was the play caller in Philadelphia, both Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders went for double-digit rushing touchdowns. That's an easy outcome for 2024 for Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson, in my opinion, especially in an offense that I project to be much better than I guess the entire community expects to be. This is a Colts offense that was fantastic with Gardner Minshew at the helm last year. So I think with Anthony Richardson, the sky's the limit in 2024 for the Colts. And I think we see the Jonathan Taylor we know and love come back in 2024. And then at number 6, I have Jahmyr Gibbs. After a great rookie season, Jahmyr Gibbs finds himself back in a fantastic situation on an elite offense with an elite offensive line that's projected to score the second most points in football right now. I fully expect Jahmyr Gibbs to get an uptick in volume and workload in 2024 in terms of total carries, and we all know that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to see all the receiving work out of this backfield in 2024, so that's absolutely huge for his fantasy upside and honestly floor as well. The only reason I have Jahmyr Gibbs out of the top 5 at number 6 here is because I feel as if he's the only guy out of these top 6 where his counterpart in the backfield is still going to be a massive part of the offense. I don't expect David Montgomery to just fully go away like a lot of people do. I still expect him to be the pure between the tackles runner. He's still going to get a lot of goal line work because he's good in those areas, and he's going to be the drain the clock out guy. You don't really want Jahmyr Gibbs anyway to be the true workhorse of your roster. He's not a true between the tackles grinder or downhill runner. So I fully expect the Lions to keep him fresh and use him in the ways that he's best, which is runs outside the tackles, get him out into space, and let him create in the receiving game as well. And then at number 7, Devon Achane. Look, just another explosive, dynamic second-year running back on an elite offense. This is a guy who is the most explosive running back in football last year and will be going into 2024 as well. Just like Jahmyr Gibbs, Devon Achane is in line to see much more work in 2024. He should see a lot more carries this season going into year 2 of his NFL career, as long as an expanded role in the receiving game. This Miami coaching staff has already come out and said that they really want to get Devon Achane involved in that aspect of his game, and that's huge for a guy like Achane. Anytime you can get a guy as explosive and as dynamic as Devon Achane more touches, whether that be in the receiving game or in the run game, that's more opportunity for him to take one to the house from any point in the field. So I'm very high on Devon Achane, and this is one backfield that I really have my eye on coming into training camp. Do they really view Achane as a true number 1 back? How involved will Raheem Mostert be? Will Mostert be the goal line back? These are all questions I'm really hoping to get answered in training camp, because if they view Devon Achane as the true number 1 back and he's going to see a 65% snap share, man, he'll skyrocket into my top 5 rankings pretty easily. Moving on to 8, 9, 10, and 11, I have Kyren Williams, Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, and Travis Etienne. Starting with Kyren Williams, I mean, the more I think about this, the more I feel like I'm lower on Kyren Williams than I should be. This is a guy who last year absolutely exploded in fantasy football, averaging over 20 half PPR fantasy points a game, and the situation around him only got better. The Los Angeles Rams continue to invest into this O-line, and they should be getting a healthy Cooper Kupp back in 2024, which would just be absolutely massive for this offense as a whole. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if this Rams offense finishes as a top 5 overall and top 5 scoring offense, and we're all sitting here wondering how we let Kyren Williams slip out of the first round after the 2023 he just had. At number 9, Derrick Henry. This is a fit that I'm just very intrigued by to see how it works out. Derrick Henry is a very different runner than the Baltimore Ravens have ever had, and this is a very different scheme than Derrick Henry has ever been in his NFL career. There's no denying that this is a system that provided extremely efficient seasons last year for guys like Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell, along with 15 rushing touchdowns for the pair of those guys. And Lamar Jackson is just an absolute huge part of that. Defenses always have to be cautious and wary of him at all times, and that just opens up the running back run game in massive ways like we haven't seen before in some rushing offenses. The one concern for me with Derrick Henry is he was already not a guy who was going to see a lot of receiving work due to his skill set and the type of back he was, but now he goes to an offense where he is projected to see absolutely zero receiving work, in my opinion. With guys like Lamar Jackson, who are so dynamic with their legs and what they can do in the open field once they tuck it and run, those guys really don't love to check the ball down at all. We all know that. It's historical data shows they'd rather take off with their legs than check the ball down. So I think that virtually just limits Derrick Henry's upside to total yards and touchdowns, which is why he's at 9 instead of my top 5 to 8. And then moving on to number 10 with Isaiah Pacheco. Look, I just love drafting good players on elite teams, right? And Isaiah Pacheco is exactly that. This is a guy last season that the Chiefs relied on heavily late in the year and during their Super Bowl push, and he delivered in massive ways. Late in the year, he proved that he can handle the third down and receiver work to be a true workhorse back in the NFL, and I fully expect that to be the case in the 2024 season, seeing as the Chiefs have yet to re-sign Jerick McKinnon, and it doesn't look like they plan to at this very moment. Also, this Chiefs offense should just be vastly improved in 2024 if we just look at the upgrades they made to their wide receiver position from last year when they didn't have a wide receiver outside of Rashee Rice that could catch a football. They go out and they sign Hollywood Brown, who is a fantastic fit for this Chiefs offense and what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes want to do. They go out and they trade up in the first round to secure the fastest player in NFL history ever in Xavier Worthy. So I fully expect the electric, dynamic, high-powered, high-scoring Chiefs offenses that we all know and love to be back in 2024. And it wouldn't surprise me if they took that massive step forward again. And Isaiah Pacheco is a full-time workhorse for that team. So I think it's wheels up for Isaiah Pacheco, and I think he is set to absolutely smash in 2024. And then getting into number 11 with Travis Etienne. Look, I know I'm a lot lower than most on Etienne, especially coming off a season where he was the RB3 in PPR formats. However, that was due to a massive uptick in volume, which I don't predict to happen in 2024 once again. The Jaguars coaching staff have already come out and talked about lessening his workload earlier on in the season to keep him fresh for the end of the year in the NFL playoffs. And if that's the case, that would be a massive hit to his fantasy production. While it would absolutely help real-life NFL football, bringing back a more explosive, dynamic, and electric Travis Etienne, it would limit the potential scoring upside for Etienne going into the year. And look, I fully expect Travis Etienne to still have a massive role in the receiving game, seeing that the only guys behind him right now on the roster are Tank Bigsby and Dearness Johnson, as well as also having the goal line role, which is why Travis Etienne is still a top 11 running back for me. I just don't project him to be a top 5 back once again like he was last year due to the downtick in volume that we're all expecting. Then moving on to number 12, 13, 14, and 15, I have James Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, and Rachaad White. Starting at number 12 with James Cook. After Joe Brady took over calling the plays in 2023, James Cook had the biggest games of his NFL career. And now with a full year of Joe Brady calling the plays, I fully expect James Cook to be in line for a true 3-down back role in an offense that should run the ball a ton more with the losses of Gabe Davis and Steph Diggs. The only real concern for me for James Cook going into the season is how inefficient he's been on the goal line in his career and what that means for those goal line touches. Will they rely on Josh Allen and his legs a lot like they did in 2023? Will the addition of Ray Davis, will he chip in on the goal line? Will he take touches away from James Cook on the goal line? Those are some of my concerns, but I still think that James Cook is set for a true workhorse role in 2024, and I think he's set to smash as well in 2024 and provide us with an RB1 season. Moving on to number 13, Joe Mixon. This is a guy who just prints RB1 seasons, recording an RB1 season 4 of his last 5 fully healthy seasons. And now he goes from a elite offense in the Cincinnati Bengals to another elite offense in the Houston Texans. And Joe Mixon looks prime for a true, absolute workhorse role in this Houston Texans offense with really nobody behind him besides Dameon Pierce, who this Houston staff showed us last year. They have zero interest in putting on the field and in getting in the game. So I think Joe Mixon is in line for a huge role here that's going to include all the receiving and goal line work on an offense that's going to be absolutely dynamic and score a ton of points. Then moving on to number 14, Alvin Kamara. I think we're projecting way too much of a fall off for Alvin Kamara heading into 2024. While I know this offense is going to be much worse this season and this situation is going to be much worse this season, this is a guy that, once he came back from suspension last season, was RB3 in fantasy points per game. He's still an elite receiver. He's still the guy who's going to see all the receiving work out of the backfield on an offense that we project to be trailing a lot in 2024, on an offense that we project to be a lot worse. So they're going to have to lean on Alvin Kamara and what he can do in the receiving game. And he still should be the guy who is the guy on the goal line. While I fully expect Taysom Hill to vulture some touchdowns because that's what Taysom Hill does, we all know that, Alvin Kamara will be the primary running back for those situations. And I don't think there's a running back on this roster that last year proved or is yet to prove that they are any real threat to Alvin Kamara's total workload. So I fully still think he's going to be a high-end RB2 and maybe even a back-end RB1 in 2024. Moving on to number 15, Rachaad White, another guy here who's just going to see a boatload of volume. Listen, while I understand that he is one of the absolute worst and most inefficient runners of the football, this is a guy coming straight off a 300-plus touch season where the Bucs really added no competition for him to compete with in 2024 outside of a day 3 rookie who I don't expect to significantly impact Rachaad White's workload in any means necessary. So How low can we really put a guy like Rachaad White, who is dead set on getting 275 plus touches, which also happens to include all the receiving and goal line work? For me, it's 15. And then at number 16 and 17, I have Josh Jacobs and Kenneth Walker. Look, I know I'm a lot lower on Josh Jacobs than the rest of the fantasy community. However, it's because I feel as if I view this Packers backfield a lot differently than the rest of the fantasy community. I feel as if a large portion of this community is expecting Josh Jacobs to just walk into this elite situation with an elite offense and take over a true workhorse role. And I don't view it that way at all. This is a coach in Matt LaFleur who, his career as a play caller, he has never used a true workhorse back. This is a play caller in Matt LaFleur that when he had Derrick Henry in 2018, he platooned him with Dion Lewis. And then his first year in Green Bay with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, he platooned those guys. And then every year with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones, he platooned those guys as well. So I fully expect this to be a 50-50 split, if at worst 60-40 split in favor of Josh Jacobs. And I also feel as if the fantasy community thinks that Josh Jacobs is just going to walk into this Packers offense and take over the Aaron Jones role. I don't view it that way at all. I think Josh Jacobs is a much different player than Aaron Jones, and ironically, I think at this stage of his career, he's a lot closer of a player than A.J. Dillon, just a lot better. He's more so of a downhill runner who's going to be fantastic between the tackles while also being great on the goal line. So I do expect Josh Jacobs to get all of, if not most of, the goal line opportunities. However, I don't view him as that big explosive play threat outside the tackles who they're going to manufacture touches for and get involved in the receiving game. I view that guy to be Marshawn Lloyd, man. I think Marshawn Lloyd is much more like Aaron Jones at this stage of both their careers than Josh Jacobs is, and I don't think it's relatively close. I also think the draft selection in the third round of Marshawn Lloyd is a big deal. It's not like they went out and drafted this guy in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. They paid up in the third round to get him and to acquire him, and I fully expect him to have a massive role in this offense for the Green Bay Packers. And then at number 17 with Kenneth Walker. This is a guy I'm really struggling with because I'm not exactly sure how he fits this Ryan Grubbs offense. As we all know, Kenneth Walker is an extremely dynamic, explosive running back who creates a ton of yards off the contact and makes a lot of guys miss in the open field. However, he's very hit or miss, and I'm not sure that's a great fit for Ryan Grubbs' offense. You know, this is a very spread-it-out, pass-heavy type of offense where the running back just needs to get what's given to him. And Kenneth Walker hasn't really been that type of back. You know, he's really, as I said, a big-time hit-or-miss back, and I'm not sure how that fits here. I'm just a little bit concerned that Zach Charbonnet might be a better fit for this Ryan Grubbs offense than Kenneth Walker. So this is a backfield where I'm really keeping my eyes and ears on the training camp buzz and see how they view these guys. If it comes out that this is going to be a true 50-50 split, then I think Kenneth Walker deserves to be way down and Zach Charbonnet deserves to be way up because he's going to be the pass catcher out of the backfield. So if he's seeing 50% of the snap share plus the receiving work, I think it's wheels up for Zach Charbonnet and an unfortunate time for Kenneth Walker. However, if it comes out that Grubb still views Kenneth Walker as the number one back and they really want to get him involved at every phase of the game, it could absolutely be wheels up for Kenneth Walker because we know how good he is on the goal line. He's been one of the absolute best goal line backs in the entire NFL since he came into the league. So this is one where I'm being a little cautious about, and I'm keeping my eyes and ears glued to the training camp beat reports and how this new coaching staff views Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. And moving on now into 18, 19, and 20, I have James Conner, David Montgomery, and Ramondre Stevenson. James Conner, I think, is a guy that the fantasy community is really sleeping on, man. I know he's a lot older now, heading into his age 29 season, but this is a guy who looked fantastic last year. He didn't show any signs of age or any signs of slowing down, and I'm very excited for his 2024. I know a lot of people might be concerned about the addition of Trey Benson and what that means for James Conner's volume and output. However, I view Trey Benson as more of a 2025 and beyond pick than a 2024 pick. And if we listen to some of this stuff that the Arizona Cardinals staff has already come out and said about James Conner, it's very glowing reviews, and I fully expect that to be the truth because, as I said, he was fantastic last year and he showed no signs of slowing down. And this Cardinals offense only got better in this offseason. We'll have a full season of healthy Kyler Murray this year, a full season of Trey McBride with no Zach Ertz in front of him, and now an addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. So I expect this Cardinals offense to be a lot better, and I think James Conner is going to be the number one go-to back in this offense. And then 19, David Montgomery. Man, I just love David Montgomery. He's so rock solid, and I fully expect him to still have a massive opportunity share in this Detroit Lions backfield. I fully expect him to still be that true efficient between the tackles runner who gets a ton of goal line work as well as being the drain the clock out back when they're up by a few scores to really end the game off. I know a lot of people are expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to take a massive step forward in year 2, and I am as well. However, if you just look at these carry shares from when David Montgomery was coming back from injury and still playing a little bit injured, the worst the carry share got for David Montgomery was 48% in his favor to Jahmyr Gibbs 42%. And I honestly view that as a worst-case scenario situation for David Montgomery going into this season. So I still fully expect David Montgomery to be a major part of this Detroit Lions offense that's going to be fantastic once again and score a ton of points. And then moving on to number 20 with Ramondre Stevenson. Man, I love Ramondre Stevenson this year. I think he's in a fantastic situation in New England this season with the addition of Alex Van Pelt and his new offensive scheme. I think Ramondre is just a fantastic fit for all this gap scheme stuff that Alex Van Pelt runs, a lot more than he was the outside zone stuff that the Patriots were trying to implement last year. I also think Ramondre is another running back with a true 3-down skill set who also happens to be a fantastic receiver as well out of the backfield. And I know a lot of people are going to mention the Antonio Gibson signing when it comes to the receiving work. I feel as if Antonio Gibson is going to be used more as a manufactured touch guy or screen guy out of the backfield, as he is a guy who's going to spell Ramondre Stevenson off the field in 3rd down situations. So I fully expect a 3-down workload for Ramondre going into this year. He's just at number 20 for me instead of being in the top 15 or whatever, because I'm not exactly sure how much we can expect out of this New England Patriots offense going into 2024. Led by either Jacoby Brissett or a rookie in Drake May. And then finishing off my final tier here for you guys. At 21, 22, 23, and 24, I have Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard, Najee Harris, and Zach Moss. Starting at 21 with Aaron Jones. I'm not exactly sure how to feel about Aaron Jones heading into 2024 yet, so that's why I'm a little bit lower on him. This is a guy who, at 29 years old, is always banged up and always fighting injuries. However, when he's healthy, he's extremely efficient and extremely productive. But now this season, he goes from an elite situation with an elite offense in the Green Bay Packers to a Minnesota Vikings situation where, yes, they have a very good O-line. Yes, they have fantastic weapons. However, the quarterback position is going to be run by either Sam Darnold or a rookie in J.J. McCarthy. And how much can we expect from those guys? How efficient will this offense be with those guys? How many scoring opportunities will there be with those guys? I'm not exactly sure, so that's why I'm a little bit lower on Aaron Jones, as well as the fact that I truly believe that the Minnesota Vikings do like Ty Chandler. I fully expect Ty Chandler to have some involvement in this run game and be a major part of this backfield. And then moving on to number 22 with Tony Pollard, another controversial player. I know Tony Pollard broke a lot of hearts in 2023. However, I think as a community, we didn't account for Tony Pollard losing as much explosiveness as we should have coming off of a major surgery year 1. I think we were way too bullish on Tony Pollard and what he would be in fantasy in 2023 due to the situation around him and the fact that he was glued into a true workhorse role in an elite offense that we all knew was going to score a ton of points in the Dallas Cowboys. However, going to year 2 off of surgery, I think he's going to be fully healthy in 2024, and I think you saw glimpses of it at the end of the season late last year, when he started to be more efficient, he started to make guys miss, and he started to break more tackles. I fully expect that to be the Tony Pollard we get in 2024. And I know a lot of people are going to be concerned about Tajay Spears and how Brian Callahan and this offensive staff have given glowing reviews to Tajay Spears, and I fully get it. However, I've always been an actions speak louder than words guy, and one of the first free agent moves that the Tennessee Titans made with this new coaching staff in the building was sign Tony Pollard. So this is clearly a guy that they viewed as needing to add to their roster, and they felt like he was giving them something that they were really missing in that running back room with just Tajay Spears. So I fully expect Tony Pollard to be the true 1A here, and I also think he's going to be a lot better in 2024, as I stated. So I'm a lot higher on Tony Pollard. Once again, another backfield I'm keeping my eye on in training camp. Maybe it's not all smoke around Tajay Spears, but that's currently how I'm viewing it right now, and I can't wait to see how that backfield pans out. And then number 23, Najee Harris. Look, I know Najee Harris hasn't been great since he came into the NFL. However, I truly believe this is the best situation of Najee Harris's career. He finally gets a good offensive line to run behind, with the Pittsburgh Steelers making massive improvements to their O-line the last 2 seasons. He finally, no matter what your opinion is about him, has a competent play caller in Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith has proven to us before, as an OC and a play caller, that he can design a hell of a run game, and he can be an efficient play caller when he needs to be, and when his quarterbacks aren't Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and Taylor Heineke. So I know a lot of people are down on Arthur Smith and what it means for this Pittsburgh Steelers offense as a whole. However, I think this run game is going to be fantastic in Pittsburgh. And Najee Harris is the guy that I fully expect to be the true number one who's going to see a bulk of the volume. And I think he really fits Arthur Smith's prototype for a running back and his scheme extremely well, where Jaylen Warren is more of that get him out in space, explosive threat. We've also seen since both of these guys have been Steelers in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren that Mike Tomlin don't view Jaylen Warren as a goal line back. Najee Harris significantly outtouches Jaylen Warren in that section of the field, and I fully expect that to be the case going forward into 2024. I still 100% absolutely expect Jaylen Warren to still be involved. He is a fantastic young player who is also one of the most efficient running backs in football if we look at all his advanced metrics. However, like I said, he's just not as good of a fit in this Arthur Smith system as Najee Harris is, and the minimalistic goal line work that he will see is also very worrisome. And then finally, rounding out my top 24 with Zach Moss at 24. Look, I think this is just a fantastic fit in terms of player and scheme. No team in the NFL ran more running plays out of shotgun than the Cincinnati Bengals, and no running back is more efficient with running plays out of the shotgun than Zach Moss. So a match made in heaven here. And while I understand that Zach Moss isn't going to see any of the receiving work, that's all going to go to Chase Brown. That's what Chase Brown does very well, and that's where Zach Moss struggles. So I fully expect Zach Moss to just be a first and second down running back. However, I think Zach Moss is going to be the true and only goal line back on this roster, and that is extremely valuable to me, because this is an offense that is going to be fantastic and is going to score a ton of points. So you're locking in a guy like Zach Moss into a bona fide goal line role on an offense that's going to be top 10 or so in points scored. So I think he's set up to succeed in a big way in 2024, and I'm very high on Zach Moss. Now I'm just going to touch on some guys I didn't mention that I know a lot of you guys are going to be curious about, starting with somebody like Zamir White. I left Zamir White off because I think that this Las Vegas Raiders offense is going to be absolutely terrible, and I'm not exactly sure how much I believe in a guy like Zamir White, who was a day 3 draft pick, who rode the pine for 2 straight years because the offensive staffs didn't think he was good enough to get in the games. Also, he's a running back that has absolutely zero pass catching upside. He will never be on the field in third downs. That's either going to relegate to Alex Madison or Dylan Laube, who they just drafted. So what is really the upside here? He's going to be a first and second down back on an offense that's not going to score a ton of points. And he's also a running back who gives you zero pass catching upside. So he won't be in my top 24 for me. I just simply can't do it. And then another guy who a lot of people are going to be worried about, Jonathan Brooks. Look, I love Jonathan Brooks. I think he's fantastic. I think he's awesome. However, I have no idea when he's going to be ready yet. So if training camp rolls around and he's already practicing and he's getting involved early and often, and they think he's going to be ready earlier in the season than we all suspected, he'll shoot up my boards. But I'm projecting him to miss a few games right now, which is why he's outside of my top 24. If that weren't to be the case and he came back week 2 or 3, he would absolutely shoot up my rankings because he's an awesome player. He's an awesome prospect who fits this Dave Canales offense extremely well. And we all saw what Dave Canales' offense did for Rachaad White in fantasy football last year. Lastly, I'm going to touch on 2 guys, DeAndre Swift and Javonte Williams. I don't love DeAndre Swift as much now as I did when they first made the signing. Looking at this roster in this backfield, this roster's loaded, man. How many touches are there really going to be for DeAndre Swift in this offense that has DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert, and Roschon Johnson? I'm not exactly sure. Will he get most of the carries? Will he be the guy at the end of the year who significantly outcarries everybody? More than likely, yes. However, the way that they said they're viewing him as this true mismatch nightmare, a guy they want to get involved in the receiving game, get him running the full route tree down the field, all this good stuff. I mean, that's cool and all, and it sounds great on paper, but where are those targets going to come from, right? How many guys can you truly target here? I'm not so sure, and I also don't expect DeAndre Swift to be the goal line back, as we touched on earlier. He's just not great there, and they have 2 guys in Herbert and Johnson who are much bigger backs and will be much better in that area. So I'm not exactly sure what the upside of DeAndre Swift is this year. If one of those guys in Herbert or Johnson, more than likely Herbert, were to get traded or cut, I would be significantly higher on DeAndre Swift going into the season. And then Javonte Williams. This is another guy like Tony Pollard last year who I feel like we didn't bake into enough how much explosiveness he would lose year 1 coming off a major surgery. I fully expect him to be much healthier and better in 2024. However, How good will this Broncos offense be? I'm not exactly sure with a rookie quarterback at the helm and really no weapons outside of Cortland Sutton on this roster that you can rely on. And also, what does this running back room really look like? McLaughlin surely will take a step forward in 2024 coming into year 2 in the NFL. You know he's going to get a lot of pass catching work. They're going to manufacture touches for him because he's a very explosive and dynamic guy. And they went out and drafted Audric Estime, a big, true between the tackles runner who could also see a ton of goal line work. So how many valuable touches will there be for Javonte? How many touches overall will there be for Javonte? And will they be high leverage touches in the goal line or in the receiving game? We have yet to know yet. He could get traded. If he gets traded to somewhere like Dallas or anywhere like that where he would instantly be the starting running back, I think it would be wheels up for Javonte in 2024. But yeah, that's my top 24 with a few honorable mentions, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, nothing here is final at all. I will have updated rankings once we get closer to the season and fantasy drafts start kicking off and all that good stuff. But yeah, my next one's going to be my top 36 early wide receiver rankings, so be on the lookout for that. And I'll catch you in the next one.